Greetings everyone. I'm grateful for the chance to participate of this conference. I'm Shao. Today, I will discuss my paper, Environmental Diplomacy in Transition, Contemporary Impediments and Policy Countermeasures. I have organized my presentation into four main components: research background, challenging causes, favorable conditions, and effective responses. Let's begin with the first part of my presentation. In our increasingly interconnected world, the ecological health of our planet is of utmost importance. Consider the current environmental trajectory, which suggests a gradual but persistent degradation of our natural environment. Notable consequences stemming from this trend, including receding Arctic ice caps and rising sea levels. Regions such as the Middle East and Africa are grappling with recurring water shortages. They also face pervasive pollution, significant waste accumulation, dwindling forests, and other pressing concerns. Many of individuals are probably familiar with the Paris Agreement, a landmark international effort to mitigate temperature rise and adapt to the resulting environmental changes. Since the 1960s, there has been a growing global awareness of environmental sustainability, but the path forward is fraught with challenges. These include balancing economic imperatives with ecological preservation, addressing disparities between developed and developing countries, and developing optimal strategies for global environmental governance. To effect meaningful change, it is imperative to fully understand and address these challenges. Let's now examine the main challenges facing environmental diplomacy. Through extensive research, I have identified four predominant obstacles. First and foremost is the persistent tension between developed and developing countries. A tension rooted in differences in economic status, historical context, and stages of development. The economic divide is pronounced, with many developing countries still struggling with the legacy of the past, including the lingering effects of colonialism in some African countries. An important reason rise. Who bears primary responsibility for the current environmental predicament? Historical evidence suggests a significant contribution from the developed world, exemplified by the role of the United Kingdom during the early Industrial Revolution. However, there has been a noticeable shift in contemporary discussion of environmental challenges, with developed nations arguing for shared responsibility, a sentiment that was evident during the Paris Agreement negotiations. In summary, developed countries often fail to meet their commitments to help developing countries address environmental challenges. Barriers to technology transfer are tangible, with intellectual property rights being a significant barrier, as evidenced by India's challenges in vaccine production. Such barriers not only impede environmental initiatives in developing countries, but also erode trust between the global north and south, thereby jeopardizing international environment cooperation. Moving on to our second challenge, let's delve into the intricacies of international cooperation mechanisms, which I believe are critical to shaping our environmental diplomacy. First, we face a problem of agreement that, while important, often lack the teeth to be enforced. Since the inception of the Global Ecological Forum, we've seen a plethora of environmental agreements. However, many remain more symbolic than actionable. A case in point is the devastation crisis in the Brazilian Amazon. Despite global outcry, the problem persists, largely due to the lack of robust international legal intervention. It's imperative to recognize that international regulation should not be overshadowed by narrow national interests. Prioritizing fleeting local gains can jeopardize the very essence of global environmental cooperation. Second, while the United Nations has been a beacon of environmental protection, it's not without its challenges. Financial constraints, often the result of member states failing to meet their commitments, upper its effectiveness. Its expensive structure sometimes results in fragmented initiatives that are sometimes eclipsed by entities such as the World Bank. The influence of Western powers in decision-making, coupled with regionalization of developing countries, pose further challenges such as biases, weak enforcement mechanisms, and procedural hurdles such as the one country veto, can impede effective action. Moreover, the UN tendency to prioritize traditional threats over environmental concerns, especially in its relations with entities such as the G20 and SN, adds layers of complexity to its environmental diplomacy efforts. Next, let's consider the implications of environmental diplomacy of national sovereignty. Historical inequalities between developed and developing countries have a significant impact on environmental dialogues. Developed countries which have contributed significantly to environmental degradation now expect developing countries to share the responsibility equally. Inadequate commitments from developed countries of areas such as intellectual property rights impede cooperative efforts and undermine the trust that is the basis for international cooperation. The focus here is on how these dynamics affect national sovereignty and autonomy of nations in making environmental policy decisions. Another present concern in this field of environmental diplomacy is the interplay between population growth and global environmental degradation. Since the 1950s, the world has experienced an annual population growth rate of over 1.8%. In 2013, our global population surpassed 7 billion and is projected to exceed 9.5 billion by 2050. This exponential growth is putting more pressure on our already limited resources, leading to challenges such as devastation, water security, pollution, and increased poverty. A stark example is the recent devastation in the Amazon, driven by both land development and population pressure. Similarly, regions such as India continue to struggle with industrial pollution. In the face of these challenges, the call for robust international environmental governance becomes even more urgent. While progress has been made through global cooperation, persistent problems, including threats such as terrorism, add layers of complexity. Tackling pollution comprehensively requires socio-technological solutions. However, disparities between developed and developing countries often complicate matters. Developed countries may be reluctant to transfer technology to provide financial assistance. Developing countries may be more flexible on environmental standards. These disparities pose significant obstacles to effective global environmental governance. Building on this, let's look at the favorable conditions that are shaping environmental diplomacy in our global community. The urgency of global environmental challenges has heightened the international community's awareness of the need to protect the environment. Recognizing the Earth is our only habitat, its continued degradation has galvanized global efforts to preserve it. This urgency has spurred the creation of both global and local organizations dedicated to environmental advocacy. For example, the establishment of organizations such as the International Association for the Protection of the Environment and the International Association for Energy Conservation and Environmental Protection in 2007 underscores the importance of global cooperation in conservation and technology transfer on a more local level. Initiatives such as China's Nature Conservation Center and Japan's Green Earth Network highlight the universal nature of environmental advocacy. In addition, influential figures from U.S. Treasury Secretary Paulson to entrepreneurs like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos have championed environmental causes, while governments around the world are ramping up investment in green technologies. As we consider these efforts, it's important to recognize the evolving field of national environmental law. This legal framework traces its roots to the 1972 United Nations Conference on the Human Environment and has been strengthened by subsequent conferences, including the 2002 World Summit on Sustainable Development. As global environmental challenges have intensified, a more comprehensive legal regime has emerged, bringing together specific environmental treaties and provisions from other legal instruments. This comprehensive legal structure has been instrumental in promoting global environmental protection and cooperation. Countries' adherence to agreements such as the Paris Climate Agreement and the Convention on Biological Diversity exemplify this commitment. Many nations are furthering their commitment by enacting environmentally conscious laws, such as those made at reducing plastic and stricter limits on carbon emissions. Environmental diplomacy itself has come a long way, with milestones from the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment in 1972 to the World Summit on Sustainable Development in 2002. The journey has been transformative, but as we face growing challenges such as extreme weather events and biodiversity loss, the need for greater international cooperation becomes even more apparent. Recent disasters, including floods in Western Europe and heat waves in Asia, underscores this urgency. Countries responding by revising the Paris Climate Agreement and adopting initiatives such as Green Belt 2023, which emphasizes cooperation to address environmental threats. NGOs and businesses are playing a key role in this shift, advocating for collective conservation efforts and carbon neutrality. Today, environmental diplomacy is at the heart of global security and prosperity, and requires the unified commitment of all global actors. Having discussed the challenge and enable conditions that shape environmental diplomacy, it's critical to turn our attention to the actionable responses that can effectively address these challenges. These responses not only offer solutions, but also pave the way for the more sustainable and cooperative global environment. First, the concept of state sovereignty must be reevaluated. As global environmental governance evolves, nations, especially those in the developing world, must balance their sovereign rights. With global environmental responsibilities, this doesn't mean compromising sovereignty, but rather recalibrating its definition in the context of global environmental imperatives. Regional cooperation, as in frameworks such as ASEAN or the African Union, can empower developing countries to protect their interests. And while international environmental evidence is invaluable, nations must critically assess the intent behind such evidence to ensure it's not self-serving. Shifting our focus to non-state actors, the role of NGOs in environmental diplomacy is monumental. Organizations such as Greenpeace and WWF are not only raised awareness, but have also brought about tangible change. Their impact on cooperative behavior, such as Greenpeace's pen and Shao, and innovative solutions such as EPF for nature swaps, demonstrate the transformative power of NGOs. As we grapple with the escalating climate crisis, these organizations must intensify their collaboration with governments, businesses, and communities. On the legal front, the establishment of robust international legal framework is non-negotiable. The impact of incidents such as the Bhopal gas tragedy underscores the need for strong oversight, especially with regards to transboundary pollution. A cooperative approach embedded in a multilateral framework is essential. The United Nations, its global reach, must refine its mechanisms to address these challenges more effectively. Finally, the intertwined challenges of population growth and resource waste cannot be ignored. The projections of global population approaching 7.7 billion by 2020. Initiatives such as Rwanda's Uganda are stepping in the right direction. But it's not about just curbing population growth. The staggering 130 million tons of food wasted each year underscores the need for sustainable resource management. Countries need to embrace green technologies, resource recycling, and sustainable policies, such as Denmark's commitment to wind power and Japan's Montanai principle. In sum, the landscape of environmental diplomacy is both complex and dynamic. From the historical imbalance between developed and developing countries to the pressing challenges for population growth and resource degradation, our global community faces multiple dilemmas. However, it's heartening to observe favorable conditions and proactive measures emerging on the horizon: the recalibration of state sovereignty, the influential role of NGOs, the strengthening of international legal frameworks, and the emphasis on sustainable resource management all demonstrate our collective resilience and innovation. As we move forward, it's imperative that we continue to foster dialogue, cooperation, and mutual respect. Only through unified commitment and global cooperation can we ensure a harmonious and sustainable future for our planet. Let's embrace these challenges, not as insurmountable obstacles, but as opportunities to redefine, innovate, and collaborate for a greener tomorrow. Thank you.